I quit my job today. When my husband came home and told me this at the entrance, I almost dropped the cup I was holding. What? Why? Steve stood in the doorway, looking dejected, holding his work bag. The job wasn't really fitting me, and my boss was pretty tough. Indeed, Steve had been working until late recently, and he was clearly exhausted. But to quit all of a sudden... I wish you had discussed it with me a little. I held back the rest of what I wanted to say. Perhaps Steve had been pushed to his limits with his workload, but he had already quit, so it was too late to say anything. I understand. I'm sure you will find a job that suits you better. Steve looked somewhat relieved and hugged me tightly. Kate, I'm sorry for worrying you. I'll do my best to find a new job as soon as possible from tomorrow. I smiled, intending to support Steve for a while. At that moment, I didn't think deeply that this situation would last long. My name is Kate and I am 31 years old. I work as an office worker. My parents passed away when I was young. My grandparents, who raised me, passed away before I got married. Now, my only family members are my husband and my in-laws who live nearby. Steve and I are the same age and we've been married for 3 years. We don't have any children. Our relationship has been good. We've spent a lot of time together since our marriage, understanding and helping each other. However, the situation changed after Steve quit his job. It's been about a year since Steve left his job. In addition to my regular job, I started doing part-time jobs like data entry, which kept me busy. Steve's job search hasn't been going as we hoped. I once suggested that he do part-time work while job hunting. However, Steve was negative about the idea, saying, "If I spend time on part-time job, I can't focus on my job hunting. I work as a full-time employee, but my salary isn't particularly high and I don't have much financial leeway. To support the household, I've been trying to be creative with our budget and live frugally. With my husband's employment benefits and our savings, we are barely making the amount we need to live day by day. Another problem is the lack of time and energy for household chores after finishing my work. We used to share housework, but ever since Steve quit his job, he has been helping less and less. There are days when Steve is busy job hunting, but there are also days when he is home all day. To be honest, I wish he would help more with the chores if he is not working. He insists on focusing entirely on his job search and doesn't want to listen. Watching the dirty dishes and laundry piled up makes me angry. I don't expect him to do everything. I am willing to do what I can, but when I have to work late, household chores are the least of my problems. Balancing both is simply tough. Hey Steve, can you at least help with the laundry and dishes on days you're home? When I finally broached the subject, Steve showed clear irritation and clicked his tongue. I'm constantly searching for jobs, doing my best. I wish you wouldn't nag me about it. I just shrugged at his response. I knew there was no point in arguing with someone who's already emotional. I was too tired to retaliate anyway. I've been exhausted from all the overtime too. That's why I'm asking for just a little help. I tried to phrase it as politely as I could to avoid sounding sarcastic, but Steve heaved an exaggerated sigh. Are you trying to say you are the one who is taking care of the family? You are so condescending. I'm going to bed. Steve ended the conversation abruptly and walked past me towards the bedroom. Just then, I caught a faint scent. What's that smell? I blurted out without thinking. Steve paused and gripped the doorknob. Did you go out for job hunting today? After job hunting, I went to the sauna. Sometimes I need to refresh. Otherwise, I get too stressed and can't get good results. He said that, closed the bedroom door. Sauna, huh? I remembered that just recently he came home smelling like beer. He said drinking was his way to clear his mind. As I tidied up around my husband's messy desk, I felt a growing unease inside. Could he be hiding something from me? Could he be pretending to job hunt and actually spending time with another woman? But it might be too hasty to think that way. He could just be overwhelmed by the stress and uncertainty about the future. He might just be trying to refresh his mind at the sauna. But deep down, I couldn't shake off the feeling of suspicion and found myself unable to continue with the chores. I wondered what would my in-laws say in this situation. Suddenly, their faces popped into my mind. My father-in-law still works while my mother-in-law helps out with farming beside her household chores. Could I possibly ask them for some help? No, that's unlikely. I shook my head. According to what Steve told me, they were actually supportive of his decision to quit his job. Also, they seem to have a rather cold attitude towards me. It's hard to imagine them being of any assistance. They seem to think that because you don't have parents, you don't deserve me. They say they don't want to get too involved. His words deeply hurt me. When I visited them, they seemed kind and welcoming. I thought they accepted me as their daughter-in-law. But as time passed, Steve would tell me about the negative thing they said about me, and I too chose to keep my distance. Even if our relationship was good, involving in-laws in marital issue isn't appropriate. That's why I have to face this heads-on. With that determination, I began to wash the piled-up laundry. A few days later, on a typical morning, I left for work. While I was heading to my office, I thought, I feel off today. Maybe it's fatigue building up. The sudden onset of feeling unwell combined with the gloomy weather led to an unfortunate event. Before I realized, it was already too late. My feet slipped and the world around me spun. Loud noises accompanied by pain shot through my body. The last thing I felt before losing consciousness was a sharp pain in my left ankle. When I became conscious, I found myself lying on hospital bed. You slipped on the little crack at the parking lot and fell. You've sustained bruises all over your body and fractured your left ankle. You will need to be hospitalized for at least a month. The surgery on your ankle went well, and the injuries to your head are just superficial. The doctor smiled and told me I was lucky. As the doctor left the room, my husband entered the room. I was shocked when I received a call from your office, Kate. One of my colleagues found me collapsed in the parking lot and called an ambulance. He handed me a bag with few belongings and charger inside. Is this enough? To be honest, I needed more clothes, towels, and toiletries. I understood he must have rushed, so I felt grateful he brought me anything. I'm sorry to trouble you. If I need anything else, I'll let you know. Sure, while you're in hospital, my mom is helping out at home, so you don't have to worry about anything. I was surprised at his words. Really? She is at our place? I need to call her and thank her. He seemed flustered and started speaking more. It's okay, don't call her. She doesn't like you and she might say things you won't like. Seeing his reaction, I just nodded in agreement. 3 weeks have passed since my hospitalization and Steve hasn't visited once. Even when I messaged him things I need, he mostly ignored my messages. The few responses I received were cold and short. On the other hand, my boss has been caring and visited me often. He said, "It happened because you are overworking, so please rest and don't worry about work." Staying at the hospital required expenses, and I struggled. I wanted to contact Steve, but since I wasn't alone in the hospital room, it wasn't easy to make calls. I had to ask a nurse for a wheelchair to move to an area where calls were allowed. Oh, I haven't thanked my mother-in-law yet. Suddenly, I remembered. Despite Steve's advice, I felt the need to thank and apologize to her. I felt a bit embarrassed for forgetting. After getting the wheelchair from a nurse, I went to a spot where I could make a call. Well, Kate, this is rare," she responded cheerfully. Feeling nervous, my voice trembled as I spoke. "I've been out of touch. I heard you've been taking care of Steve while I've been in the hospital. I'm really sorry for the inconvenience. Actually, my discharge has been delayed." I struggled to convey my thoughts, but there was silence from her end. I grew anxious. "What are you talking about? I haven't visited your house in a while." I was speechless. There's no reason for her to lie about such things. I then explained to her about my injured ankle, the surgery, and my current hospitalization. "What? You are in hospital? Why didn't you tell me sooner? I will come to take care of you right away." She hung up, leaving me a bit baffled. I wasn't expecting that. Based on Steve's behavior, I had assumed she and I weren't on good terms. 2 hours later, she came rushing into the hospital. My mother-in-law, presumably having just purchased them, took out changes of clothes, towels, and some drinks. A worried expression spread across her face. "It looks bad. Are you okay? Starting tomorrow, I will come every day to help out. Let me know if you need anything, okay?" Having a direct conversation with her after such a long time, I was deeply moved by her kindness. I thanked her and informed her that during my hospitalization, my husband has been ignoring my messages, and I had to ask her to help with the household chores in my absence. I can't believe Steve said that. I had no idea. He didn't tell me anything, so I couldn't help. I'm sorry, Kate. The mother-in-law patted my back, and unexpectedly, tears started to flow from my eyes. "I had an impression that you didn't like me very much." "What? That's not true. I thought you were avoiding me." Both of us felt uncomfortable about our mutual perceptions. We decided to openly share our feeling with each other. It turned out that my husband had manipulated our impression of each other. Additionally, my in-laws didn't even know that he had quit his job. What a liar, such a hopeless child. With a shocked look, the mother-in-law let out a deep sigh. It seems that my husband had a habit of lying to cover up his mistakes since he was a child. She explained that he had plotted everything, making sure both parties had a negative impression of each other. After the talk, we both said, in almost the same tone, "He is up to something." I particularly doubted my husband's actions, wondering if he had other reasons, like an affair. "Mary, I have something to discuss," I said softly, and my mother-in-law smiled and said, "I will talk to my husband and see if he can help." 2 months after being admitted to the hospital, my discharge day finally arrived. "Why didn't you come visit?" "I checked my mails and I am here, and I've been busy because I got a job at a major company." Meeting him for the first time since the day I was admitted, My husband continuously talked about his job hunting struggles inside the taxi. Then let's celebrate. You recovered. Let's have a big celebration. However, after arriving home, he quickly went into the living room. I couldn't help but sigh and went inside. Following him into the living room, he looked at me in surprise. What's this? On the table, there was a divorce paper filled out in my section with my in-laws as witnesses. Is this some kind of a joke? He held up the divorce papers and shoved them in my face. Pushing his hands away, I smiled. This is my discharge celebration. Let's celebrate in a big way. As I spoke, the door to the room next to the living room opened, revealing my in-laws and an unfamiliar man. My husband was clearly confused. What are you guys doing here? And who is this guy? He's the lawyer I hired, introduced by your father. The lawyer greeted Steve warmly and handed him a business card. Relishing in my husband's shocked expression, I smiled. After reconciling with my mother-in-law, I had made some requests to my in-laws. The first was to install security cameras in the living room and bedroom, mainly handled by my technically skilled father-in-law. The other was to have them as witnesses on the divorce papers, if my husband had an affair. The evidence was clearly recorded on the cameras. The lawyer's statement made my husband's shoulders tremble. I hadn't seen the footage, having told not to by my in-laws, but I remembered my mother-in-law whispering to me that the evidence had been secured. Something was definitely captured. While your wife was in the hospital, it's clear that you invited a woman over multiple times and let her stay over. This is undeniable. This can't be happening. Isn't this invasion of privacy? At that moment, my father-in-law exploded with anger and said, "You foolish son, apologize to Kate first," and threw a fist at Steve. My husband crumpled to the floor, holding his face in pain. I looked down at him, clearly angry. I rented this house in my name. I just installed the cameras because people I don't know might come and go as they please. Using my house as a hotel is your problem. My husband was in tears from the pain and humiliation. He then knelt and began detailing his affairs. It was the daughter of the president at my husband's new workplace with whom he had an affair. He tried to excuse himself by saying she approached him when he was there for the job interview. Initially, he expressed regrets for quitting his previous job without notice and claimed he was seriously looking for a new one. However, as his relationship with the other woman progressed, he continued the affair, taking my love for granted and growing overly confident. Even while I was hospitalized, it seems he continued the affair at our home. Apparently, she recently made a surprising proposal to him. "If you divorce your wife and marry me, I can use my connection to get you a job." "Kate, I was with her just to get a job. I don't love her. Please believe me and don't divorce me." I chuckled when I saw my husband's terrible crying face. "But you joined the company on the condition that you divorce me and marry her, right?" He remained silent. What was all my effort for? I devoted myself to housework and my job, believing in a future with my husband. Realizing that it was all for such a man, I felt devastated. "Steve, our relationship as mother and son ends here. The inheritance I plan to leave you will now be used for your father and me to enjoy our life together and eventually enter a nursing home." My husband paled at my mother-in-law's words and seems unable to speak. My father-in-law just nodded silently. I looked at my husband, who had pleading eyes and said, "You must have enjoyed yourself plenty during the 2 months I was absent. Difficult times lie ahead for you now. Goodbye." My words were laden with emotion. My husband looked sequentially at my in-laws, me, and the lawyer, tears streaming down his face. At that moment, I truly felt our relationship was over. A few days later, our divorce was finalized. I demanded some compensation from my husband and his mistress. Even the mistress' father said, "I sincerely apologize for my daughter. She will make amends." Although they weren't fired, the company president sent both to challenging work locations. They now face the double burden of labor and compensating me, living with deep regret. A few months later, my leg pain completely disappeared. As a token of my gratitude, I gifted my in-laws a hot spring trip, which we all enjoyed together. Photos from trip radiate the happiness of me and my in-laws, signifying a new beginning. "You are still young. I know your heart was hurt by my son's actions, but please live your life for your own happiness." During the trip, these words spoken by my mother-in-law moved me to tears and left a deep mark on my heart. Although we are no longer family, I sincerely wish for their happiness and, as they expect, I'm determined to find my own happiness. A new path lies ahead of my life, and I'm prepared to walk it.